Peace be with you, friends. On this fifth Sunday of Easter, we hear another powerful gospel. Like the one last week, it's short and direct. But it's right at the heart of the Christian message. This passage begins what is known as the Last Supper Discourse. It's the longest teaching Jesus gives in the entire New Testament. A long, deeply spiritual message spoken the night before he dies. And this is how it begins. Jesus says, "My children, I will be with you only a little while longer." That's true. It's the night before his death. So these words are like his final will. Jesus is speaking to us from the edge of his life. He says, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another. This is how everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love each other." Maybe you've heard that before many times. And now it might sound familiar, even ordinary. But it's not. To understand what Jesus means, we have to look closely at this word, love. I think of a line from Dostoevsky. He wrote, "True love is a harsh and dreadful thing. If we treat it as something sentimental, or as just a nice feeling, we've missed the point." That's not what Jesus is saying. Near my home, there's a Unitarian church. I pass it often, either on foot or by car. Outside there's a large sign. It says, "Love your neighbor." Next to the word neighbor, there's an asterisk. At the bottom, it explains. Your black neighbor, your brown neighbor, your gay neighbor, your transgender neighbor, your bisexual neighbor. The list goes on. Every time I see it, I think, yes, I understand. But what exactly do you mean by love? You say, love your neighbor. And I agree. But what kind of love are we talking about? Because I suspect it may not be the same love that Jesus meant. This is something we've discussed before, but it's worth repeating. English is a rich language. Its vocabulary is wide and flexible. But when it comes to the word love, English is limited. We use one word to mean many different things. That creates confusion. For example, I love popcorn. I love my grandmother. I love God. I love going to a baseball game. All those are very different experiences. Yet we use the same word. So when Jesus says, "Love one another," we need to ask, what kind of love does he mean? The Greek of the New Testament helps us. It's much clearer. Greek has several different words, each describing a different kind of love. But in English, they all become the same word. That's why it's easy to misunderstand what Jesus is saying. Let me walk you through 3 Greek words for love. They are eros, philia, and agape. All 3 are translated into English as love. These words all translate as love, but they mean very different things. So what does eros mean? Well, our word erotic comes from it. Eros is a passionate, intense desire for something or someone. You can see the obvious sexual overtone in erotic desire. But at its core, it's about wanting to possess. It's a drive to take hold of something. It's intense. It pulls you toward a person or a thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing eros. Let's be honest. None of us would be here without it. Without something like erotic desire, we wouldn't be born. We wouldn't even survive, because we also have that same drive for food and drink. It's an intense passion, and it's very human. I mentioned earlier, I love popcorn. That's how we say it in English. The other night, I wanted a small snack. Normally, I take a small bowl to limit myself. But the bag was almost empty, so I thought, why not just take the bag? I went downstairs, turned on the TV, and before I knew it, I had devoured all of it. I went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and I had popcorn curls on my face and bits on my shirt. I thought, this is like addiction. Like I couldn't stop myself. If popcorn were as dangerous as heroin, I'd be in serious trouble. But that's what eros is like. It's this overwhelming, consuming desire for something. Now, the second word is philia. Think of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Philia in Greek means friendship. It's the love between friends. When you say, "I like that guy. She's great. I enjoy her company." That's philia. It's a warm, mutual affection. It's not as self-centered as eros. Eros wants to possess, like an animal instinct, for food, for sex, for control. Philia is different. It's I enjoy being with you. I want to share time with you. You're my friend. You're someone I choose to be with. But listen carefully. Jesus is not telling his disciples to have eros for one another. That should be obvious. He's not saying, love one another in an erotic way. And he's also not using philia. He's not saying, I want you all to be close friends. Think about it. Peter, James, John, the disciples were all chosen by Jesus. But that doesn't mean they always liked each other. It doesn't mean they got along or wanted to spend time together. Jesus isn't commanding friendship. He's not saying, you must be best friends with everyone, even centuries later. No. The word he uses is different. Not eros. Not philia. The word is agape. It's still translated as love, but it means something else. You've probably heard me mention Thomas Aquinas. He used the Latin word caritas. He defined it this way, to will the good of the other. That's agape. To will the good of the other. That's the command Jesus gives to his disciples. That's how people will know you follow him, that you have agape for one another. Not a desire to possess. That's eros. Not a desire to hang out. That's philia. It's a desire for the good of the other. That means it involves self-sacrifice. You could also call it a commitment to the other person. That's agape. But we sinners are very clever at avoiding true love. What do we often end up doing? We act like we're willing someone's good. But deep down, we're hoping they'll give us something in return. I'll be just to you, so you'll be just to me. I'll be kind to you, hoping for kindness back. But that's not agape. That's not willing the good of the other. That's using the other for our own benefit. Agape, as Jesus commands it, means breaking free from the black hole of our own egotism. And you know what I mean, fellow sinners, that constant pull back to self. To our own needs, our own wants. Jesus says, I want you to break out of that. That's the love he is talking about. Let me give you a concrete example. One of the great saints of the 20th century, Maximilian Kolbe. He's the priest who stepped forward in a Nazi camp. A man had been chosen to die. Kolbe said, take me instead. I'm a Catholic priest. Spare him. Take me. And they did. They starved him to death, one of the most painful ways to die. Did Kolbe know this man? I don't think so. Were they friends? Did he feel philia toward him? Did he enjoy spending time with him? Honestly, we don't know. There's no evidence that they had any kind of close relationship. But in that moment, Kolbe showed the clearest example of agape. A love that forgets self. A love that sacrifices. A love that wills the good of another person. That's the love Jesus means. Not eros. Not philia. There's nothing wrong with those. But they're not what he's commanding. He's calling us to this self-surrendering love. If you want a place in the Bible to go deeper, read 1 Corinthians, chapter 13. You've probably heard it at a wedding. But listen carefully. Paul isn't talking about eros. He's not talking about philia. He's talking about agape. The English says love, but Paul is describing agape. Love is patient. Why patient? Because it doesn't seek its own good. It seeks the good of the other. So it bears all things. It puts up with trials. Because it loves. Love is not envious. Not boastful. Not arrogant. Why? Because agape pulls you out of your ego. It doesn't think of itself. It seeks what's best for the other. Love doesn't insist on its own way. That's the mark of ego. It's also the mark of eros. I want this for me. I must have it. But agape doesn't work like that. It lets go of control. It doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing. It rejoices in the truth. If you only care about yourself, you might be glad when wrong wins, because it helps you. But agape wants what's truly good for others. So it rejoices in what is true. And then Paul says it so beautifully, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. That's not eros. That's not philia. That's agape. The love that empties itself. That forgets itself. That gives itself for the good of another. And that's for everyone. That is the command Jesus gave on the night before he died. That's how people will know we are his disciples. And may God bless you. Peace be with you, friends. Today is the fourth Sunday of Easter. We read from the Gospel of John. It's a short passage, but full of power. Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd." And then he says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them. They follow me." Now, that image of a shepherd might feel distant to us. But in the Bible, it's one of the strongest and most consistent metaphors. From the Old Testament to the New, the shepherd calls out, and even though sheep aren't the brightest animals, they somehow know the voice that belongs to them. And the shepherd? He knows his own. It's a beautiful picture of how Christ reaches out to each of us. He knows us personally. And we, even in all our confusion, are still able to recognize him. That voice. The one that stands out in the noise. That's the voice we follow. And that's what I find so mysterious. Why do we follow Christ? Is it family? Upbringing? Those things help. But somewhere along the way, something deeper happens. We hear many voices in this life. But one of them cuts through. And we say, "That's it. That's the one I will follow." That right there is the Christian life. The New Testament makes a bold claim. That voice isn't just for some people. It's meant for everyone. Jesus is not just another wise figure. He doesn't just have a few million followers like other spiritual teachers. No. He says, "I am the good shepherd." Not just one option among many. The will of God is that all people hear his voice and follow. Now look at the first reading for today. It's from the Acts of the Apostles. That's what the book is about. The Apostles, apostle means one who is sent, were sent by Christ. Empowered by the Holy Spirit. Their mission? To bring the nations in. Yes, they started small. Just a few people. Traveling along the eastern edge of the Mediterranean. But they knew what they were meant to do. Think about Paul. As a student of Gamaliel, he knew the ancient texts. The prophecies that the nations would stream toward Jerusalem. He understood that the purpose of Israel was to gather the world. So after seeing the risen Christ, Paul recognized that voice. That shepherd. And then he said, "This voice must be heard everywhere." That's why he wanted to go to Rome. And not just Rome, Spain. For him, that was the end of the world. Paul wanted every person to hear what he had heard. That's exactly what he was doing. Stepping outside of the Jewish world. Bringing the message to the Gentiles. And now look at us. We are the fruit of that mission. Gentiles who heard the call. And we responded. Then, in the book of Revelation, we get a glimpse of something even greater. John writes, "I saw a vast crowd. Too many to count. People from every nation, every race, every language. They stood before the throne and before the Lamb." That's heaven, yes. But it's also the church. A family gathered from all corners of the earth. All brought together by one voice. The voice of the shepherd. That's what evangelization is. That's the whole point. To bring people to that voice. So here's the question for us now. How? How do we hear it? We know the image. A shepherd. His flock. But in real life, in our noisy world, how does that voice reach us? And they heard him. But what about us? How do we hear that voice? Well, there are many ways. Through the teaching of the church, that's true. Through the witness of the saints, yes. Through the sacraments, especially the Eucharist, absolutely. Through good, compelling preaching, of course. These are all ways the shepherd speaks. He uses secondary means. And through them, his voice echoes. But let me ask this. Isn't the clearest way we hear the shepherd's voice through the conscience? The conscience. John Henry Newman, one of my great theological heroes, once called the conscience, in his powerful words, the aboriginal vicar of Christ in the soul. Now Newman, once he became Catholic, fully accepted that the Pope is the vicar of Christ. He represents Christ, and in his teaching, we can hear an echo of the shepherd's voice. But Newman also believed something deeper. That the more original vicar of Christ is the conscience. In the voice of conscience, we hear the voice of the shepherd. And what is the conscience calling us to? It calls us to moral virtue. To do the right thing. To walk the right path. In the words of Thomas Aquinas, to do good and avoid evil. The conscience is the voice that guides us. But today, we hear a lot of skepticism. Try talking about morality in public, and you'll hear it. Many skeptics say, "Come on, morality is just private opinion. You think something is wrong. I think it's fine. You do your thing, I'll do mine. Live and let live. We're in a diverse, inclusive world. You tolerate me, I'll tolerate you. Morality? Just opinion. But is that really true? Scratch the surface of anyone's thinking. Ask a few honest questions. And you'll see, no one actually believes that. Let me give an example. Imagine I say, I think slavery is terrible. But that's just my private opinion. If you think it's okay, who am I to say otherwise? Well, wait a minute. That doesn't hold up. In the 19th century, many respectable people thought slavery was acceptable. So what? Should we just say, well, that was their opinion? I don't think so. Or imagine I say, I think abusing women or children is wrong. But maybe you don't. Maybe in your culture it's different. Who am I to judge? Come on. Does anyone really believe that? When you dig a little deeper, the answer is no. Even those on the far left in our society, they hold strong views about morality. For them, these are not just opinions. These are moral truths. Right and wrong, objective, not private. Here's another theory you hear. Some say morality is not just personal. It's about cultural consensus. In other words, what's right or wrong is what most people in a society agree on. So, for example, take abortion in our country. Maybe the polls show a consensus. Some abortions are seen as wrong, others as acceptable. So people say, let the culture decide. Don't push your private view. But is that a strong foundation? Let's test it. Suppose I'm a German citizen in the year 1935. And I say, we have a problem with the Jewish population. I agree with Hitler. He's got it all figured out, right? He's expressing a cultural consensus. That Jews are a problem. That they should be rounded up. And maybe even sent to camps. Maybe at the end killed. Was that a common view in Germany in the year 1935? Yes, it was. There was a strong cultural consensus around it. Or bring it closer to home. Let's say you're in the deep south of our country in the year 1950. There's a widespread agreement that Jim Crow laws are good. That white people belong here. And black people belong there. That segregation is right. That there should be separate fountains. Separate restrooms. Separate restaurants. And you hear someone say, that's just how our culture is. But really, do you buy that? Do you find that persuasive? I don't know anyone who seriously would say, well, maybe rounding up Jews was just part of their cultural moment. No. It was a moral outrage. It was objectively wrong in every possible way. The same goes for Jim Crow. I don't know anyone today who would say, that was okay. That reflected our cultural values. No. Any serious person knows, what Hitler did was absolutely, objectively wrong. Jim Crow laws were absolutely, objectively wrong. Now here's the third idea you often hear. Especially in debates with modern atheists. It goes like this: what we call morality isn't really objective. It's just a result of evolution. A byproduct of natural selection. As we evolved, it became helpful for the group to survive if people were kind, altruistic, and cooperative. So morality is just that, a survival tool. It's not real. It's just evolution at work. But even as I repeat that idea, I'm struck by how empty it sounds. Here's the problem. If morality is just the product of evolution, then what happens when evolution changes? You say slavery is wrong. Why? Because evolution taught us so. But what if evolution keeps going? What if one day it teaches us that slavery is fine? That abusing children is okay? Does that make it right? Of course not. People know there's something deeper. We sense that morality is not just a tool. It's not random. It's real. It's objective. And this is the point. The conscience is that inner voice. It points us toward what is good. It warns us against what is evil. The aboriginal vicar of Christ in the soul. It speaks clearly. It says, "This is the path to take," or, "That is the path to avoid." When you do something good, don't you feel it? A deep sense that you've pleased someone. And when you do something wrong, you feel it too. A sense that someone has been offended. Where does that come from? Two places. From the objectivity of moral truth, and from the presence of the conscience. So let me suggest this. The voice of the shepherd can reach us in many ways. But maybe the most primal, the most reliable, the most direct way we hear it, is through the conscience. So don't ignore it. Don't silence it. Don't run from it. Don't numb it with distractions or addictions. That's what sinners often do. Instead, listen. Just listen. Listen again. The Lord said, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them. They follow me." The Lord Jesus Christ knows you. And His voice echoes deep within your soul. Through the conscience. Listen to Him. Follow Him. And may God bless you.